In this video, I'm going to give you a little bit of color theory to help you out, and color theory is a big topic. It can be its own course, but I just want to give you a little bit of knowledge so that hopefully it can help you out in your design work or your photographs. I'm going to be using photos, but this applies to photography, web design, graphic design, all of these color different things you can actually use in any type of those industries. So color is important and you want to keep that in mind. So let's talk a little bit about color theory. Here we have the Adobe Color web-based app pulled up so we can just see this a little easier. We can see we have the color wheel selected, analogous colors, we have our color swatches, and then we have our color options at the bottom. Now, of course, we have the CMYK, which means the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So if we turn, let's turn up the first one to 100. And then turn these down. You can see that that is cyan in the first channel, so 100% cyan. And then in the second channel, we have the magenta. So then we have the magenta, so cyan, magenta. This will be yellow, the third one. Okay, and then the last one is actually going to be black. Because when you're printing, you'll need the black channel to help out with the printing. Then we have red, green, blue. It works the same way. We have red is the first channel here, and then green, and then blue. Then we have our lab colors, and then we have the hue, saturation, and brightness. So if we go to that one, you can see the first one is hue. So this is going to tell us what hue color to pick, and then the brightness, how bright we want it to be. There you go. And then the saturation, and then the brightness at the end. And you can see those sliders here. So when I move this slider, you can see that's going up in the brightness, and then the saturation, and then the hue. So it doesn't matter how you like to work. You can use any of these to move around. We will talk about value or the brightness here in a little bit, but just keep in mind, let me turn this all the way down so we have grayscale, that 0 in the brightness or the value is black and 100% is white. That's a pretty common thing that you'll need to know when you're working in Photoshop because it affects all kinds of things such as color, layer adjustments, and so forth. So let's go ahead and we'll just go back to where we were, which is somewhere around here. And we have what Adobe is calling analogous colors. Now, these are color theory terms to describe what type of colors you're using. And by using these types of color theories, analogous, monochromatic, triad, complementary, compound, shades, and custom, you will have the ability to create some really great looking designs, and I'll show you why. Now, custom just means that you can come in here and customize any color shape that you want to. I can move these points around anywhere and it doesn't matter. But if I go to analogous, what happens is it locks the shapes down, and when I move the center one with the arrow, you see they all move together, and you can see what analogous color means. It means colors that are close to each other on the color wheel. Now, I can click these and drag them out, but you see that they move evenly. So it's even colors around the color wheel. And eventually you get to a point where you're not really doing analogous anymore. You're doing some other type of color designs. But if we keep them similar and we move them around, we have what is called analogous colors, colors that are similar to each other. Let's go ahead and import an image. And if we click on the analogous file and hit open, it's going to allow us to select some colors. So I'm going to go ahead and let's pick one of the darker colors. First color was probably good. Let's see. Okay. And we have that color, and then we have this light color. Let's see if we can pick another yellow. It's pretty similar. Yeah, we'll stick with one of the lighter colors here. Okay, and then when we can pick our colors based on this image, you can see this image is using analogous colors, colors that are similar to each other on the color wheel. So if we go to the color wheel, you can see it has a tighter spacing. However, those colors are going around the color wheel, and we can design our work to use similar colors. Now, if we wanted to edit these and move them around, we could to get some different options. Maybe they're too tight for us, and we'd like to pick some options that are a little further spread away. But that image is using analogous colors because those colors are similar to each other on the color wheel. So let's look at the next one, monochromatic. Monochromatic means that you're going to use the brightness or the value 0 to 100%, but you're going to stay in line with what other colors you're using. So if you pick a green, all of your colors are going to be in that green line right there, and that'll allow us to have a monochromatic style or a monochromatic image. So let's go ahead and import an image, and we'll open up monochromatic. And you can see that we have a monochromatic image here, meaning that all these colors are the same. The value or the brightness is what's actually changing. Let's pick a different one so there's a little more spread out here. So we'll go to the color wheel. You can see our monochromatic image. We go to the color wheel, and you can see they're offset a little bit, and we might want to do a true monochromatic by tightening these up, but basically they are all in line with each other, and that creates that style image. The next one is a triad. This is basically saying that you are picking 3 colors that create a triad on the color wheel. So I'm just pulling these out, and as I move them around, you see that they're equal distance apart, and they create a triad on the color wheel. So 1, 2, 3 points, and then these 2 extra points have to stay in line with the other ones. It kind of skipped around because of the way I was moving it. So let's go ahead and import an image here, and we'll go to the triad. And now you can see this photograph is actually using triad colors. So let's pull one of the blues down into the orange. Maybe pick a dark orange. We've got that blue, and then we've got the green. Let's take this and do a dark green. Okay. So this is a triad color image. We have blue, green, and orange, and those 3 colors are opposite each other on the color wheel. So that photograph is using a color design principle of the triad colors. So you look at an image or you look at a piece of design work or a website, and you're like, man, these colors look great. Why is this so awesome? And this is the reason why, because there's actually thought process put behind the colors in that work. That is the triad color scheme. Then we have complementary. Those are colors that are opposite one another on the color wheel. So as I move this around, you can see that they are complete opposites. So blue and yellow, green and magenta, or green and red, cyan and orange, and so forth. So these are perfectly even colors at distance. So triad has 3 colors. This is just using 2 colors opposite one another. So we'll import that, and we'll go to complementary. And here you have 2 colors that complement one another. So let's go ahead and pick some of these more gold, yellow looking colors. And, oh, that was a good one. There we go. Okay. So this is a complementary color scheme. The yellows and the cyans, or the yellows and blues, are opposite one another on the color wheel, and that's why this image works so well. So we'll hit color wheel, and you can see that here. So we have those blues and we have those golds, and they are almost opposite one another. Again, you can always adjust these around if you want to get it more perfect. And they don't have to be perfect, but it just shows you some of the thought process behind what's going on in these images. And then finally, we're going to look at compounds. So compound is going to be equal spacing apart with randomly selected colors within those colors. So we have the yellows and the blues. It's almost like complementary. However, they're offset a little bit by the degrees, and then you add in a couple extra colors around. So as I move these around, you can kind of see what's happening here with their color schemes. This is a compound color scheme. We'll import the image. We'll hit compound. And let's pick, it's got one of those. That looks good. Maybe pick up another one of these purples here. One of these greens could be, okay. So we'll go to the color wheel, and you can see it's kind of the same distance that they used in that image. where it's got that equal amount of spacing apart from that angle, but it also has a couple extra colors throughout them. So that is a compound color scheme that's making that image work so well. So if I go to the import image just so you can look at them again one more time, we have the analogous color, the complementary color, the compound color, monochromatic, and triad. You can see how those colors are working in these images. Finally, we have shades. These are just going to be shades of one color. And then, of course, we looked at custom. And custom means we can just move these around however we see fit. But those are some of the basic color theory design principles, analogous, monochromatic, triad, complementary, compound, and shades that you need to be aware of and try to see if you can start using them in your projects. Now I want to talk about one more thing inside of Photoshop, so let's head over there. And I want to mention values or the shading or the brightness within your image, the value really. And this is one of the most common things or common mistakes I see people make whenever they're doing any type of design who doesn't know about color theory at all. And the problem is that they pick close values on the color wheel, and it makes it really hard for you to see an image. So for instance, let us go ahead and we are going to pick, say we pick a blue or pretty rich blue color, and we're going to fill this in, foreground color of the blue we picked, and we hit OK. And you can see where that is. In our color panel here, it's right here. And then now let's say that we want to add some text to this blue, and we want to pick a magenta color. So we go up and we pick a magenta color. We like this. We hit our type tool. You can see the magenta is selected. And we're just going to type color. And this isn't terrible. However, it's a little hard to see because the values of these colors that have been selected are very similar to one another. Let me go ahead and color pick the background color to that blue so we have both of them. And if I switch back and forth between the two, I'll hit X. You can see that the color value, the brightness and contrast are in line with one another. So one isn't brighter or darker than the other, and they don't have much contrast in the values. Now the magenta and the blue kind of work well together. It's a little easy to see, but you really notice this when you get similar looking colors. So if someone said maybe not that, I want to pick like a cyan or a different color blue, and then we look at that, you can see that it's really hard to see on the screen. And for some people who have color discrepancies in their eyes, they might not even see this at all. So having those same values makes it really hard to see in your design work. Now sometimes you want to go for that. You don't want to see some of the text pop out so much on the page, but if you're trying to make this work, you need to use different values, which means this needs to be either way brighter or way darker than the blue that's being shown. So if I select that, and I can use that blue, but let's just lighten it up a little bit by going toward the brighter side. And then we look at that, you can see it pops a lot more because we're not using that same value. It's the same thing if we wanted to go darker with that color. Say we went down to a darker color, it's also going to be easier to see because there's contrasting values. And that's a very common mistake that I see people when they're making logos or thumbnails or a course image, and they show this good looking design, but you can't read what it says. It's because the values are so close together. So with the different color design principles that I showed you, the analogous and monochromatic and all those different colors, and by creating contrast, you can really have some great looking color in your design. And again, this is a really basic run through of color. There's so much more involved in it, but hopefully with Photoshop, this gets you started on some ideas on picking color for your projects.